This is Ryan Elliott for Boxing Social in association with Betfred. I'm delighted to be joined by the Gorilla, John Ryder in London. John, first and foremost, before we get going, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. Lots to talk about, obviously. First and foremost, it's been about 10 days, I think, just under 2 weeks since you fight with Callum Smith. Have you managed to have a bit of downtime away from the ring?
I have. I don't know if you could really call it downtime. I've been full-time parent, school runs, nappy changing, bottle feeds. So normal life. It's nice. It's resumed, and it's nice to be back home with the family.
After everything that happened, which we'll come on to, and perhaps the unjust scoring or whatever, is it nice to have that sort of distraction in a way to go back to family life and that normal routine, just away from boxing completely?
Yeah, it is nice to switch off. I mean, the storm on social media has been overwhelming and really supportive, and really helped get through this time. But other than that, it's nice to be back home, grounded with the family, and just getting back to routine.
Now, obviously, to go back to that night in Liverpool, I was there. Many felt it was a close fight. The media at ringside, some had it to you by a point or two, some had it to Callum by a point, some had it a draw. I saw you after the fight, obviously dejected, as was Tony and the team. Could you just talk to me a bit about sort of what's been going through your head and how you've been feeling since the fight as well, like sort of processing everything that happened?
Well, initially, I've only just watched it back this morning before I come here. I mean, I'm fed up of doing interviews and saying, well, I haven't watched it back yet, and it kind of doesn't give myself a case for arguing that I won, but I've watched it back now, and listen, if I'm being very critical of myself, I give it a draw. If I'm giving myself a few of the close rounds that I think I deserve, then I'm up by 2 or 3. So I believe that I should be sat here as the number 1 super middleweight in the world, WBA super champion and ring raising champion. But something went horribly wrong with them scorecards, and none of them are even close to how the fight was. They don't represent the fight at all.
Scorecards caused such controversy. You put it perfectly when you said it. A storm on social media when, we always see the photos of the scorecards released afterwards. All 3 judges, quite surprisingly to us, had it 5-1 to Callum Smith after 6 rounds. Do you remember what sort of Tony was telling you at the halfway stage? Was that completely different to what was reflected upon the cards?
Yeah, there was no real urgency to turn the fight round. I think the game plan was going exactly as we planned. First round, don't do nothing, just get your head movement going. Wasn't even planning on throwing any shots the first round, but I was getting my distance that well that I threw a couple, threw a flurry, and got some success. And listen, I think even with that little flurry, I can give myself the first round, and that's how close the fight was.
What was going through your mind waiting for the scorecard? There was a little bit of a delay there, and then obviously 117, 111, 116, 112 times 2. But beforehand, the sort of waiting around, what was going through your mind? Did you think you'd done it? Was there a worry in the back of your head that you might be on the wrong end of a hometown decision, so to speak?
There's always the worry that you might be on the wrong end of a hometown decision, but listen, everyone around me, people that I trust and I've worked with for a long time, and people that wouldn't really give me any crap, they'd tell me the truth. They was all telling me, no, this is yours, and I knew deep down that I'd won the fight. You know when you've won, you've known you lost, you know when you've done enough, you know when you haven't, and I knew deep down, hand on heart, that I'd done enough and I was the winner.
Just to go back to sort of during the fight, you mentioned in there you feel like in your heart you won. Did you feel comfortable in there, and was there anything at all that surprised you that Callum did, or did it go pretty much exactly as you expected and what you prepared for as well?
It went exactly how Tony Sims told me it would. We worked meticulously on a game plan, and everything he told me would happen in that fight happened and went the way we planned.
We read sort of post-fight that Tony had been in contact with the WBA, trying to get in touch with the WBA to sort of have you reinstated as mandatory to try and get you back in line for a rematch. There's a lot of talk of the rematch, obviously, post-fight after what we saw. Do you hold any hope for that at all? Do you feel like it's a possibility?
I don't think the WBA are going to force it. If Callum believes that's what he wants to do, then it might be a possibility. I think Eddie's looking at something else for me, but we'll see. What will be, will be.
Now, as fans, we complain when we see scorecards like this that are far too wide. But then on the Monday after the fight, we go back to our jobs, our life goes on, and the outrage quite quickly disappears. But for the fighter, can you just explain to me, from your perspective, what it can do for a fighter to be on the wrong end of something like that? This is something you've worked your whole life for. This is your chance to win a world title. How does it affect sort of your life and your career as well?
I'm quite in a fortunate position that it's not really done my career a massive harm. I should be sat here as the world champion. I should be going to a massive fight next. I'm not down to some terrible scoring on scorecards, but I'm still in a great position. I've still come out very credible, got a lot of credit from that fight, and I believe my next fight will be a big fight and not too much of a backward step.
You mentioned the credibility you came out with there. Your stock obviously did go up in the fight, a fight you're expected to lose in many people's minds. I'm sure yourself and your team would say otherwise. That said, is that a small consolation? I'm sure you'd rather have a world title sat here right now, as you mentioned, but you know a lot of the fans have sort of rallied behind you after the fight and after the decision. Is that the small consolation to come out of all of this, that your stock has risen going into future fights?
Yeah, it's very, very small consolation. Do you know what I mean? I should have them titles on the mantelpiece at home, and I should be sat here as a world champion. But listen, it is what it is, and in 2020 I'll put it right.
Now, just to talk about yourself, I spoke to you before the fight about, you know, this different feeling at 168 and how you felt at the weight. Obviously, since you moved up from middleweight, you've been doing a lot of strength and conditioning work as well. You told me it's a bit of strength and conditioning, it's a bit of belief. I feel great at 168. Did you feel at your best in that fight at that weight as well? Do you feel fully sort of comfortable at 168?
Yeah, I believe so. I think you look at the performance, and he is the world number one and the feared man of the division, and I've gone in there and I believe I've beat him. So where does that hold me now?
Throughout your career, you've sort of been on the wrong end of a lot of close fights. You know, there's many you can look back on that could have gone either way that you perhaps didn't get, including what we saw in Liverpool 2 weeks ago. Does it sort of, in a way, when you're on the wrong end of something like a particular world title fight, does it sort of make you fall out of love with the sport at all, or make you think about things perhaps?
Yeah, it does to an extent, but the thing that keeps me in love with the sport is the training, the people I train with, the coaches. It's a great time. I think I've got to a stage now where I need boxing in my life. I love it. I live for it. It's boxing and it's family. That's the two. There's no juggling act. It's boxing and family now. So it's I'd need boxing in my life, but it does make you question the sport and the dedication, because there's time away from home, delayed periods of not being at home, not spending time with your kids, your partner, and it's a shame at times. And results like this can bring you down a bit. But on a whole, I believe boxing's been good to me, and I do owe boxing a lot.
When we were talking about what you've been doing since the fight, and you talked about going back on the school runs and just sort of spending a bit of time with family, you said there it's boxing and family. How big a motivation does your family give you, like to sort of keep on going and to keep pursuing, you know, your world title ambitions and big money fight ambitions as well? Is that the key thing for you now, about being sort of providing and sort of being motivated by your family?
Yeah, so I said boxing and family. Maybe I should say family and boxing, because it sounds like I'm putting boxing first. But yeah, no, boxing, I love it. But yeah, it is time to start securing a future for my partner and my kids, and I'm really looking to build the future for them.
Obviously, early days since the fight. Have you had any sort of contact with Eddie, or has anyone around you had any contact with Eddie regarding what could be next? I know he told myself after the fight immediately we might look at the WBA regular, something like that. Have you heard what could be coming in the next calendar year?
No, I mean, he said that to me straight after as well, and I've seen a lot of tweets about it. But I did also see a tweet that Eddie Reynoso put out that Canelo hasn't vacated the WBA regular, so it's all up in the air. I don't think the left hand knows what the right hand's doing, so we'll just wait and see what's what.
Is there any preference on your part? Obviously, that Callum Smith rematch isn't a particular possibility. Is there anyone you're looking at, maybe like a Joe Saunders rematch, or any of the names you look at on the 168 landscape and think you'd like to sort of share the ring with next year?
Any of them. I'm up for fighting all of them, whether it be Canelo, Billy Joe, Callum Smith, Caleb Plant, Benavidez. I'll fight any of them.
How's the response been for you in the last couple of weeks in terms of the fans, in terms of your social media? Has the response been overwhelming? Because from an outside perspective, as I mentioned earlier on, it looks like sort of everyone's rallied behind you in a way. How's the response been from your side?
It's been amazing. Initially, the first week, it's been overwhelming, the support. I mean, Twitter's one of them places where you get a lot of stick before you get any credit, and honestly, the credit I've received on Twitter last week has been amazing. And I mean, it's not only I've got into this week now, and it's started to bug me a bit. How amazing it's been, because I'm sitting here with all this support online, and I'm still sitting here without these belts by my side. So it's a bitter pill to swallow, but the support I've had online has been a nice rebound to look back on and just see everyone's support, and it's been really nice.
One thing I wanted to get your thoughts on, John, before I wrap this up. In the post-fight press conference, Tony was very sort of vocal about what could be done. It seems like every time there's a fight where we get questionable scorecards, we have this debate and then nothing happens. We saw in Italy a couple of months ago perhaps an alternative where they sort of live announce the scorecards every 4 rounds. Tony suggested that could be something that helps prevent this kind of situation. Is that something you'd like to see implemented? Do you think that's a good idea going forward? And if not, what else can be done?
Yeah, I think something needs to be done, because I think it's happening too often, and I think you see it in the Cheeseman fight. You've seen it in my fight now with Callum Smith, and it will keep happening. You see a bit of a dodgy scorecard with Kakachi the other day for the British title. 2 judges went for him, and the other one went the other way. But yeah, I don't know if every 4 rounds, because you could if you know you're behind, you're going to start chasing a fight, and it could really spin a fight on his head. But maybe every 2 rounds, give out the live scores, and I think it could be good for the sport, and could be good for holding the judges more accountable.
As mentioned, other than yourself, Tony was obviously devastated post-fight when we saw him. Very passionate, very emotional in that press conference. What sort of words of encouragement, or what has he said to you since the fight when you've spoken to him?
Just that I know what level I'm at now, and I know what level I can compete at. Callum Smith is the world number 1. I've gone in there and done that, so I'm up there. I will get another big fight, and there's not too much to be down about other than not coming away with the belts.
Just wanted to take the attention elsewhere, John. Rob and Andy are currently out. My colleagues are currently out in Saudi Arabia. Looking forward to a huge heavyweight rematch between Andy Ruiz Jr. Anthony Joshua for the Unified Heavyweight Championship. Just wanted to get your thoughts on that fight, and in your opinion, how the fight plays out as well.
I thought so. You got the bum deal because you're stuck here in London and not in Saudi. But no, I believe AJ can turn it on his head and be crowned world champion again. And listen, what a legacy that will be. It's a stumble in the road, but he'll come back and be world champion again.
What do you think he has to do differently in comparison to the first fight? Obviously, he had the knockdown early on. Andy Ruiz came back fighting fire with fire and just sort of took over in the driver's seat. What do you think Anthony must do differently to approach this fight?
Just be patient. Just use his attributes. He's a bigger man. He's a stronger man. He's a faster man. Listen, don't play into Andy Ruiz's hands. We see what he can do. He's a dangerous fighter. Just don't underestimate him. Be patient. Don't let your heart rule your head. Just use your boxing brain. He's got a good boxing brain, and he can come out victorious.
From Andy Ruiz's perspective, in a similar way to almost what we saw with yourself and Callum Smith, pre-fight, everyone always cites the size as such an important factor, that size advantage. It was happening with yourself, people saying, well, he wasn't that big at 160, he's not that big at 168, and Callum Smith's a monster. Ended up almost playing into your hands in a way, like the way you close the distance. Andy Ruiz has got something similar with Anthony Joshua. From your perspective, how can it play into your perspective, being the smaller man in there in the ring?
Listen, I think it's hard for the taller fighters. Sometimes they got to crouch down and they got to stay in that position. It's a lot of strain on the legs. If you're not used to it, then it's a building process. You've got to get used to being in that crouch position. So I think AJ's very athletic, and he'll know what he's got to do. He'd have worked meticulously to get this game plan spot on for this fight, and I don't believe he left any stone unturned, and will be champion again.
All right, well, John, I know you mentioned I've got the bum end of the deal, but it's been a pleasure to sit here in London with yourself while everyone else is out in Saudi Arabia, so I'm not going to take that, but thank you very much for making the time for Boxing Social. Best of luck with everything going into the new year.